your attention and drag you into this meeting, whether you want to come or not. Our evacuation procedure, if we encounter an emergency, we're going to exit through the lobby, which is behind you all. If those doors, for one reason or another, are blocked, we will exit through these doors here and through the council lounge back there. The gazebo in Lions Park is the muster point. We will hang out there until somebody with a whole lot more authority than one of us tells us that it's okay to come back in. What's next? Public notice. Oh, this is a new one. Never done this one before. Please be advised, I saw this written somewhere, here it is here. Before we note, please be advised that we are being recorded. This recording may include your image, voice, and/or other personal information. The information is collected under the Protection of Privacy Act. If you have any questions about this, please contact the town's Access and Privacy Officer. And we go on to the agenda. With the agenda today, are there any additions to the agenda, Ms. Phillips?
Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor and Council. There are no additions.
Excellent. So we will adopt the agenda. Who would like to move adoption? Councillor Grandpa. Congratulations to Councillor Mearns, publicly and officially, for having a grandson, and now he gets to be a part of the club. So Councillor Mearns moved adoption of the agenda. All in favor? Excellent. First up, we have the Centennial Street Construction Mitigation Task Force. Hello, Ms. Mercer.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor Payne and Council. I'll just pull up my presentation here and then we'll get started. Okay, so the purpose of this report this evening is to provide some information for Council on the planned supports for businesses during the construction project that we're going to be seeing in 2027 downtown along Centennial Street. The Centennial Street Revitalization Project is an important project in the community, and we also know that it will bring some challenges to the businesses in the area because the street will have construction on it during the busiest time of year. We're heading into phase 2, which is the final phase of that project, and construction is anticipated to begin early 2027, as you heard from Mr. Boudreau a couple of weeks ago. The improvements are intended to revitalize the heart of Sylvan Lake's downtown core to be more accessible and a more modern focal point for the community. Phase 2 will focus on the replacement of all sidewalks, curb and gutter, roadway surface, installation of soil cells, support tree growth along the corridor, and additional landscaping and streetscaping components. Impacted businesses in the area play a significant role in the success of the project and the success of the area long term. Administration endeavors to work closely with impacted businesses throughout the project to mitigate some of the negative impacts of construction that the project places on businesses in the area. The task force is one way that we are working with businesses to help support them during this time. So the purpose of the Revitalization Task Force is to foster collaboration between local businesses, property owners, and the town to support a vibrant and resilient downtown during the construction project. The task force will focus on the following components during the construction project. So we're looking at coordinating collective marketing potentially, providing ideas and developing tools for customer wayfinding during the project, brainstorming customer engagement strategies for when the project is going on. The task force pillars include access and aesthetics, and that really means working on enhancing the visual appeal of the construction zone to help customers want to enter the area. Working with the engineering team on communications to establish regular updates and clear communication channels to inform customers about construction timelines, phases, and impacts, where the engineering team will focus on communication with the business owners about these things. We want to make sure that the customers also have a really clear understanding of where to go and how to get there during that time. And that leads us into the next pillar, which is customer engagement. So creating those promotional campaigns or events to encourage customers to visit businesses during the construction time, and creating a plan to celebrate the area and invite customers back downtown after the construction is complete. We will also want to focus on business supports, so identifying what are the resources that business need to help them succeed during and after the project is complete down there. I've set out a basic timeline of how this will likely play out. So we are looking at scheduling a June 16th planning session, and that's really a broad-reaching session with business owners to get some ideas, gather, understand what their fears are, understand kind of their ideas around what we can do to bring customers into the area during that time. We know that we can come up with some ideas on our own, but it won't be impactful if the businesses don't participate in that. And we know that they are actually better suited to come up with ideas to help themselves during this construction project than we could ever be. So the idea is to generate some ideas and what things we could work on for mitigation strategies, and then taking the sort of July to September timeframe to create some internal project plans to help facilitate those initiatives. And then reconvening with the task force back in the fall, September, October, to confirm those project plans and the direction that we're going to work towards. And then November and December, internally working with communications to develop any program assets that we might need, procure any services that we might need to put in place prior to the 2027 project beginning, and just really get ready to execute some of those things in the slow season. And then January to sometime in the fall of 2027, we'll work on executing those projects as we go, and scheduling meetings with the task force as needed, and having those planned out kind of in advance of when we're going to kind of have touch points. And then at some point during that spring, we'll plan the wrap up and a celebration and ribbon cutting, and a celebration to really bring people back into the area after the project is complete. We're looking at some participants, so we want to make sure we have a complement of town staff involved to make sure that we have the right people in the room to help execute anything that comes up that we agree on that is a good opportunity for the businesses. So we'll have Mr. McIntyre, myself, our tourism team, communications and events team, our culture coordinator, and then we'll invite all the business owners from the street and the very close proximal businesses to that construction area. Also the property owners and chamber, and then our construction project manager or designate. And then a question I had for council tonight was around what role does council want to play in this task force? Is it attending those two major meetings, the one in June and the one in September, October when we reconvene? Or do you want to be a part of all communications? Do you want to designate someone, or have just those have everyone attend, or have the opportunity to attend those general two meetings?
Do you want to discuss that question now, or do you want to continue and then come back to it?
We can come back to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So this aligns with some strategic direction that was placed in the economic development strategy when we wrote that in 2024, 2025. So the couple of pillars that it really aligns with is pillar number 4. And the strategy that this task force aligns with is establishing a platform for business engagement and collaboration. So really working on helping the businesses help themselves and help them work together, and establishing the platform to allow them to do that. And that's number 4.1. And then 4.3 is to transform 50th Street into a vibrant space. And it's only a vibrant space if we can encourage those businesses to stay, or encourage that fulsome space downtown. The other strategy action that this project aligns with is promoting a vibrant downtown that engages residents and visitors. So the project overall enhances the downtown connectivity and walkability, encourages mixed-use development with retail, office, residential areas that focus on inclusive and inviting designs, creating partnerships for downtown beautification, including landscaping, public art, and festive lighting, providing incentives for renovations and outdoor seating that increase the appeal of downtown, and proactively engaging landowners to optimize land use. And yes, so that is the end of the slideshow. So of course, you know, this is sort of a straw dog of a plan, if you will. The intention is to have the framework in place and then really work with the community to fill it out and fill out what those initiatives will be, will look like, and have the project be really community-led and community-driven with our support.
Well, I think the question that you posed there about council's participation piece in this is one that I think is fairly important. So, thoughts, questions, Councillor Grandpa?
When I think back to 50th A, when we did that construction, and you know, construction coffees we had, and the different involvement council had there, I think that was valuable. I wouldn't want us to get too far into the weeds necessarily in a committee, not that it's a bad thing, but I think we've got the right people there. In my opinion, you know, if we were caught up on all the communication, I think it's important that we be involved in every communication that goes out. So if people have questions, we know exactly, you know, what's being put out there and doing that. And then to have updates by that task force, you know, once a month, once things get kicked off, so that we're up to speed and we're involved that way. But that's my opinion.
Excellent. Councillor Stindy?
I'll throw in a couple thoughts. I agree with what Councillor Mearns said. I came in on the tail end of the 50A, and so I'm not aware of every detail of the communications that was done previous, but I've seen what we've done already with open houses on this project. It's not a hard no, but I don't put my name forward to be a council rep, but I could agree with one of us being the rep, likely someone who's the chamber connection or one of the economic development tourism connections. Maybe they would attend, I don't know if it's all, but most meetings. And I like the idea of getting all the communication. And that way that councillor can bring up any subtleties that, you know, is harder to read in an email and inform us a little deeper. I like everything about the structure of the plan. I was going to suggest one extra tone idea, even with a dumb idea to throw in with it. The idea of the festive gathering to bring people back to the street. I think we actually should do that right at the beginning too. And I have this image. I've twice run a jackhammer in my life for multiple days on end. You know, literally the scene of having people jackhammer, you know, the shovel digging ceremony, the ribbon cutting, the jackhammer as kind of a symbol of we're changing this place and we're open for business the whole time. Just use that as a stunt, or, you know, and I'm not saying my idea is perfect, but, you know, just that idea of a kickoff invitation to stay in the middle of this construction. And then I was thinking another idea too is more just about parking, because when you're in construction mode, you know, drivability and parking will be an issue. Maybe some of the businesses know they have extra spots in the back alley that they never use, and that we would have special signage, or is there a way of using part of the library parking lot to say, hey, here's a great place to park for people using business downtown, or maybe it's employees that just need to park there during some of the construction time. So there's a couple thoughts, but I support the idea of a councillor being a bit of a key person on it.
Councillor Winicki?
Yeah, I think it's important to have council on the task force. I know how disruptive the 50A intersection and all that was, and, you know, for good or bad, you know, this is going to be a disruptive project, even if even if we did everything perfect, if perfection can even exist in this situation, there's still going to be upset businesses. So I think just having the sort of elected component on there to hold the task force to a bit of account, and we can say, you know, we had a voice in this too, I think is valuable. I agree with Councillor Estindi. Oh shoot, I'm throwing myself in the ring. I think I'm both of the potentials because I'm on economic development and the chamber. But I do think, I'm not on tourism, but I do think having someone with a little bit more knowledge in those committees involved in there is also valuable too. It helps add an extra layer of perspective to it. So I'd be strongly in favor of having a councillor representative on the task force, despite the fact it's going to increase workloads and it may not be everybody's idea of fun. I think it's important.
I think from my perspective, task force I've always enjoyed task force a little more than some of the committees because it's a little more informal, but it's also the biggest task of your task force is information. It's really what it is. It's making sure that the information doesn't get lost or trapped in a silo. So I believe having a counselor on that is absolutely imperative. And even more than just having a counselor there, making sure that the information is coming back, because that's one that's going to be very public, and it's going to be one that's going to challenge people, challenge us on a regular basis. If we think back to the 50th A, there was a lot of concern about how things were going to go for those businesses, and during the process, a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. So I think having a counselor on the task force makes all the sense in the world. But making sure that that person is tasked with making sure that the rest of us, that the other 6 of us know definitively the answers to those questions that are being asked. And it's nice to get the answers to the questions before the questions get asked, because it's usually that group. So if we can be sure to have the right mix there, I think it's valuable to have someone there. A part of my thought in the beginning of going through this was, should there be more than one? But the answer to that, I think, is no. And council, there are a couple of events that all of council should participate in, but the vast majority of this should just be at arm's length. Otherwise, we get too involved, and that's not always a good thing. So I definitely think appointing one. I don't necessarily think it needs to be the chamber or the tourism. I think this is one that's going to cross over a lot of different avenues, a lot of different spaces. So, you know, I think somebody who has the ability to work that into the schedule wouldn't be a bad idea. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be someone who's been through this process before, because that limits again who can do it. So I think it's just the task here is going to be communication and making sure that everybody understands perfectly what's going on while it's going on, and we don't get lost in the mix of things. So, yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns? Holly?
I just want to stress that I think the one thing we can do to kick off this whole project would be just keeping it positive, because we all know that the change that's going to happen is going to be amazing. We do know how difficult it's going to be to make that change, but, you know, like Councillor Estindi said, you know, maybe a kickoff, bringing excitement to something that's hard is a great way to begin the project. I mean, if you look back at it, all the information we have about the age of the road and the sidewalks and everything else, we could tell all kinds of stories, and it has to be done. But is it going to be hard? Yes. So this is really where I think council and the town in general, we just need to stay very clear that we're there to support the businesses, keep the information flow positive. You know, there's just a lot of negative. People want to throw the town under the bus a lot. And just keep it positive. I know for myself, I read this, I was like, yes, oh, I'd love to do that, honestly, because I do that with everything. I will also say that I just have a very heavy load with committees and so on. Maybe that'll change going into the spring of next year, but I think I'd like to see someone very dedicated to this because people need to know who they can reach out to. But yeah, I'm excited to try to approach it with a real positive frame of mind. Might just be, bring some excitement to the kickoff of the project rather than it being approached as something we have to do. It's something we get to do. So yeah.
So, Ms. Mercer, I believe the supporting piece here is that we do think a counselor should be appointed, but it's going to be something that's going to require a motion. So I think we discuss it today, and it needs to be something we do in a regular council meeting. So that can come back as an item at that point. I do think, though, that just to reiterate, for the broader pieces, for the broader celebrations, for the broader communication and information pieces, I think all of council needs to be involved.
Yeah.
So if we can just make sure that happens, and then for the task force itself, we'll appoint somebody once we have that discussion in a regular council meeting.
I feel like having everyone invited to that initial June session, anyone who can attend, it would be great to just get, have that support in the room. I think a lot of this is just having the business community, the impacted businesses know that you're there for them. And, so that June 16th is really important. I love the idea of having someone sit on the committee when we do the regular committee meetings. I don't anticipate it will be too often because we want to be in touch enough, but we don't want to be in touch too much because we know that they also have stuff to do to get their work done. I love the idea of a kickoff, a ribbon cutting. I think the chamber could probably help us with that and be part of that somehow. I've now publicly told them, or we'll ask them at their meeting this week to see if that's something they could help us with too. And I think we'll have lots of support from the engineering team as well. I want to make sure that we all are aware of the difference between the task force and what the engineering team will do. So the engineering team will go and they will talk to businesses about those physical pieces of the construction. So we're coming to block off this access, or we're opening up this one, or what day do you get deliveries? Those types of things the construction engineering team will work with each individual business on, like we did for the 50 Avenue project. And this is more getting the businesses to work together on that marketing and that, how are we going to entice people into the area, and coordinated with the construction team when it's appropriate to, help bring more people in for pockets of customer shopping or whatever it looks like. So I just want to be clear on those two things. We enjoyed the construction coffees as well. I thought they were a good avenue for people to come out if they needed to come and talk, or a lot of the times those events were really a good way to let people know what was happening, because they didn't know what was happening sometimes. So those will continue, I suspect, but we can talk about that later as we plan. But thank you very much. I think, I'll bring it back to council for a motion on who can be involved.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. Next up, we have the water supply system status update. Ms. Johnson and Mr. Khan.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. So today's PowerPoint is up about the water supply and system updates, because a lot of capital and operating projects are happening to take us to the target of 30,000 population. So we will continue these updates annually, every year, till we achieve that target. And then after that, it will be upon the council to request these updates. Monique can talk to the contents of the PowerPoint.
Sure, thanks, Amjad. Thanks for having us here, Deputy Mayor and Council, tonight. As Amjad said, we wanted to provide you with a current update of our drinking water system. As many of you know, there's been a lot of additions and changes that are being made to meet that 30,000 population that was identified in the Water Master Plan and the Well Capacity Study. So tonight we're going to provide you that overview. We'll talk about system performance, demand pressures, our water conservation and demand measures policy, and conservation efforts, as well as some of our public education and our operational improvements and future planning. So I'll start off on the apologies, the transition got me there. Can you go back? Thanks. So Sylvan Lake's drinking water system is supplied by the 7 groundwater wells. 4 of those are located in the south system. 3 of them are located in the north system. For operational purposes, we'll use the distribution system divide between north and south as 47th Avenue. It isn't quite as clear-cut, but for tonight's purposes, let's call it that. Both systems include a treated water storage facility, so where we treat, store, test, and distribute our water. So one in the north and one in the south. Many of you know of the one on the south on Memorial Trail and 50th Street, and the newest facility, the North Reservoir, just to the north of town across from the Jarvis Bay subdivision, Summer Village. So both of those systems rely on a very simplistic treatment process. So unlike surface water, we only need to disinfect with chlorine. And that's for the sole purpose of sending it through the distribution pipes into the end user. So unlike surface treatment water systems, there's no filtration, there's no additional chemical additions. And this, in essence, makes it a wonderful revenue generator for the town. So once that water is distributed, it goes through a series network of different makeups of pipes in our underground system. I'm going to say that there's approximately 170 kilometers. Asset management's been down, and I unfortunately just have roundabout figures for you on as far as how many kilometers are in there. So not including service connections and businesses, about 170 kilometers. So that includes a vast array of different pipe products. So PVC, which is a plastic, in essence, material. HDPE, also another. Ductile iron, as many of you have heard before, one of our aging infrastructure issues is ductile iron. We have about 6 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe, and then we have 1.4 kilometers of PCCP pipe. You'll hear me talk about the PCCP pipe later on in this presentation. So we've taken the water out, we've put it in one of the 2 reservoirs, and in addition to that, there is a crossover pump system, which does allow us some operational abilities to bring water from the north and put it into the south system as well. Now, as Amjad's got depicted here, there is an elevation difference, as you know, from the north reservoir to the south reservoir. So in order to accommodate that, we rely on pressure-reducing valves, and that's to control the pressure moving from the water in the south reservoir, creaming down the hill, and into the lower system. So that asset plays a really important role in protecting a lot of infrastructure, not just our pipes, our pumps, but also the private systems as well. So in 2024, we replaced and repaired several of these PRVs, and we have been noticing a difference where the water is being situated. Our water analysis is also part of our system, and what that entails is 24-hour monitoring of our disinfection before it leaves our distribution system into the distribution system. In addition to that, we perform random bacteria and disinfection testing once a week throughout our system. And that looks like we will take a sample here at the MGB. We may happen to catch somebody on the street and just say, hey, do you mind if we take a sample? So that's done weekly. And then annually, we test all potable water, all raw resources as well. And we test everything from pesticides to metals and frankly, everything in between. If you ever want to review those results, we do post them annually on our website. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Amjad.
Thank you, Monique. So I will just start from how our system works. This graphical representation shows the elevation difference between the North Reservoir, which is around 1,000 meters from sea level, to the North Reservoir, which is around a 950 meter elevation. So it's a significant difference in the elevation. And our lower distribution system is even lower, say 940 meter. So with this, you can see that the South Reservoir put a lot of pressure on the system, and the North Reservoir doesn't put because it's at a lower elevation. So naturally, water flows from high elevation to a lower elevation, and just by that gravity, it can put a pressure of 85 psi in the lower zone. To prevent that, we have 3 PRVs installed in our distribution system, which prevent the water from the upper zone to the lower zone, and that's how the system works, because the North Reservoir feeds the lower zone, the South Reservoir feeds the upper zone. And theoretically, it works if all the PRVs are working. Then again, oh, thank you. No, I'm good. So in addition, we have a crossover pump at the night time when the pressure built up in the lower zone, then the crossover pump sucks water from the lower zone and send it to the North Reservoir. And another reason for this crossover pump is because the North wells are having more capacity than the South wells. And this way, this helps the system. So this dotted line shows the future lines that will connect the North Reservoir to the South Reservoir. And we have just started the phase 1, which is called Northeast Gateway. And once this is complete, then we will be doing the next one. So now I will start from how our system works and what was the problem 2 years ago and what we fixed. So this graph shows the water supply from the south wells, which are less in capacity. And as you can see, in 2024 midsummer, there was a big spike in the water. This line shows our licensed capacity, and as you can see, in 2024, we crossed our licensed capacity, and we were almost on the brink of failing some of the wells. And that was an emergency situation. Luckily, the same year, the council, thanks to the council, they approved a project, a small project to fix all the PRVs, and we fixed those PRVs sometime in April 2025, here, in this location. And after that, you can see that the spike never went across the license capacity. This red color shows the supply from the north wells. And as you can see that as soon as we fixed the PRVs, we start drawing more water from the north wells. And this is what we wanted. So with that, our system stabilized. This line shows the license capacity for the north wells. And this is the total water volume. If you add these two, it will give us this one. And this is our total license capacity. This is interesting because this black line shows the crossover pump. As soon as we fixed the PRVs, all of a sudden there was a big drop in crossover pump because both the systems were working very in a very stable manner, and there was very much less need for the crossover to pump from the lower zone up to the lower zone. And in fact, the system was, if I go back, I can explain from this. So the system, when we fixed those PRVs, the system stabilized, and it was so much stabilized that in the far end of the town, what do you call it? Fieldstone, yeah. The fieldstone, which is far end of the town, the pressure dropped. And then we have to fix one PRV on the old Boomer Road. And you can see it from this graph that the water came down in the north, and the system again stabilized. So this was just to give you an update on the PRVs, how it worked out. The next slide is about the water. The blue line shows the water, the brown line shows the wastewater. As you can see, in winter time, the water and wastewater is almost identical. But in summertime, when it rains, the wastewater is more as compared to the water production, which shows that there is an infiltration into the system. 2024 was dry year. You don't see a lot of spikes here. But in 2025, it was a wet year, so you can see a spike in the wastewater. And this is very important because we pay almost $2 per cubic meter to Sylvan Lake Regional Wastewater Commission. And we try to curb this infiltration as far as we can, and it will take time. We have also done some analysis on water loss. For the town of Sylvan Lake, it is 14% of the total production, which we lose in the leaks, operationally, and some other uses. Provincial target is 10%. Alberta Environment dictates that if your system is performing well, you should have at least, at the most, 10% of the, we are at 14, so there is a lot of work that we need to get below 10%. Some of the industry standards are very high, or best performing system are between 5 to 8%. Average is between 15 to 16%. Well-managed system are 10%, and poor managing system are 20%. So our system is average. I don't say that we are well-managed, and we are, our target is to achieve that target of 10%. as I mentioned, like leaks, operational uses, pressure related, because if there is too much pressure, it will leak too much water from those leaks. These are some of the national water loss analysis, which is from Statistics Canada, and as you can see, Alberta average is 14.86, and we are at 14th. With that, if you have any question, I will answer, or I can stay till the end.
Councillor Extendi?
Yeah, one question right now. In terms of that loss, what project, what type of work would we need to do to get from a 14 to below 10? What type of work is that?
Yeah.
Is that our ductile iron that's leaking too much, or is it something different?
Yeah, there are many things we can do. One was excessive pressure in the lower zone that we already fixed with the fixing of PRVs. And in 2024, it was 15% loss, and just by fixing those PRVs, we have now achieved 14%.
Okay.
As Monique mentioned, we have 1/3 our system is ductile iron, and there are a lot of leakages. So it will be our asset management plan to do condition assessment of water mains, and then periodically or annually we can fix those water lines, and it will be a long term.
Okay, thank you.
The new pipeline that's being constructed north of the North Reservoir, what is the purpose of that again? I know you've mentioned it to us, but I've been asked lately because of the construction that's going on out there. So.
The Northeast Gateway, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Through the chair, the Northeast Gateway serves a couple of really good purposes for the town of Sylvan Lake's distribution system. The current transmission line is simply an 8-inch line, which doesn't offer the ability to provide sustainable fire flow in west areas of town. And then in addition to that, as Amjad had highlighted on that one slide, with its full build out, we would then be able to bring water from the North Reservoir sufficiently to the South Reservoir. It'll also provide us some redundant systems. So as you see, which is evident in Calgary, is our reality as well, is that when we rely on one transmission main out of that particular facility, you put a lot of eggs in that basket. So those are the big three that we feel the Northeast Gateway is really going to benefit us.
Just to follow up to that question from Councilor Mearns, are we keeping the 8-inch in the ground?
Yes, sir.
So we'll have a double, okay.
That's correct, yep. Redundancy in this operation is always a great thing to have.
No more questions? Keep going.
Great. So with that, we'll move on to the water conservation. So before we discuss too much about our water conservation measures, I wanted to make sure that I think it's really important to clarify that water conservation and water restrictions are two completely different things. Those terms, they're often confused in the public, especially on social media. Sylvan Lake's water conservation program is not new. The town has been conserving with this program since 1995. That includes the odd and even watering schedules, limited irrigation during peak daytime demand periods, and that is very similar to a lot of municipalities across Canada. We feel that our approach aligns with the Alberta municipalities, AB Muni's Municipal Water Conservation Guide, and it's intended to support long-term water management. From an operational perspective, conservation helps reduce the stress during peak demand times. So that's during the day when their highest demand is afoot. So by doing so, we reduce the stress of those peak demand periods, we stabilize our reservoir levels, and we support fire protection throughout the municipality. And we reduce strain on infrastructure during those high demand periods. So while Sylvan Lake is fortunate to have a strong groundwater system, it's still a finite resource. We can't simply create additional water during those peak demand times, and it is a responsible mechanism to sustain our precious resources. So now on to the water conservation and demand measurements policy, which was designed for a couple of reasons. There was the drought conditions, the ongoing drought conditions throughout Alberta, and the Alberta government had made recommendations to municipalities to develop policies to work with water conservation efforts. So this particular policy, the water conservation, it's a bit of a mouthful, the water conservation and demand measures policy was developed between multiple departments, including, of course, environmental services, public works operations, parks, communications, emergency management, RCT, and administration, along with input from a professional hydrologist. So that was to ensure that we had grounded it all in basic science and operational principles. So the purpose of the policy was to provide administration with a clear, consistent framework for responding to periods of increased demand and reduced supply conditions. So the approach was to help protect the reservoir, protect the groundwater supply, protect fire protection capacity, and overall system resiliency. Well, we're hoping that we're improving the coordination, the communication, and the operational decision-making during these high demand or low flow periods. In addition to the operational planning, the conservation measures, administration focused on improving the public education and awareness that was related to the town's water system. So over the years, staff has developed a number of brochures, educational outreach materials, and topics surrounding your drinking water system, your utility infrastructure. We've created low watering landscape, and we feel, in essence, the more that the public knows, the better off they are to understand where their water's coming from, that it is a precious resource, and how to best use it. We also felt that it was important to let the public know what we were doing with those utility dollars. So that orange brochure that you have there in front of you says just that. It's not strictly water. There is some storm and some wastewater sewer backup information in there as well. But that was our first rollout. And we do feel that, it's been very well received from the public. I do remember at one specific event that we were at, I handed it to somebody and I said the word wells. And they said, no, we drink lake water. Please don't drink the lake water. We drink from the wells. So we recognized that there was definitely a need for some public education, and so far it's been very well received. The blue document you see, your drinking water, that one's a little bit more based in science. So we follow what communications has taught us, that you try to bring things to a grade 5 or grade 6 level. And that one does, I think, in my mind, delves into more of grade 7 or grade 8, but still a very readable document. That particular one talks a lot about your source, what the aquifer, what the system relies on, what the environment relies on as well. And then, of course, we've got our standard green guide, which has many links to different programs, such as our rain barrel, composter rebates, and whatnot there. And then we took a step out with the low watering planting. So a lot of native species are identified in there. And, we're looking forward to continuing on growing the public education, because I do really think that matters. When I think back to 5 years ago, just using social media as a gauge, there was a lot of misinformation. And now I'm starting to see some of our public members stepping in and saying, go to the website, check out this brochure, or no, in fact, we are well water. So I really believe that this is working. So in addition to that, we take advantage of any opportunity that we have to actually get out face in front of public. And that may be the trade shows, Earth Day, any public opportunity that we have and we have the staff available for, we're going to take it. Because again, it does make our jobs easier when the whole populace of people understand the importance of it all. So, while the seasonal demand pressures and community development continues, the overall water production has remained relatively stable. We've actually even seen a decrease between 2023 and 2025. This is encouraging both from an operational and an infrastructure management perspective, particularly when we consider that the residential and the commercial growth in that time span there has not slowed down. At the same time, we have to continue to manage that aging infrastructure, particularly the ductile iron. And we do that through ongoing maintenance, capital project rehabilitations, and then our emergency water main repairs. For as costly and as much of a headache as they tend to be, we do celebrate that we've found a leak. It showed itself to us, but we've managed to replace that. So we are focused on our long-term reliability and our formal replacement program, although it was paused in 2025, and we are hoping to see that back. There we go. Thank you. So the current water system adequately supports today's population. So based on the master plan and hydrologists' well capacity assessments, they identified that additional water supply and future well development was needed. It is to support the long-term growth targets and, as I said, addressing our peak demand periods. So it's important to note that it's not solely about the average consumption. Operationally, the challenge is managing the peak summer demand and the peak hour usage. So with future well development, as the master plan and the well capacity point out, is that we have the capacity to serve a population of 30,000 people. So with that, there's just a few bullet points here on things that I think we're all pretty well aware of, is that we need to continue to manage those demands. We're doing that through monitoring, pressure management, and water conservation. We're planning, our planning is based off of the water master plan, demand forecasting, and then of course system performance. We need to increase our available supply through additional wells. And of course, we're strengthening the connectivity between the transmission systems. And then phasing infrastructure investments to maintain the reliability and the long-term resilience is important. So we'll just go through these ones quickly, and we do have our capital projects expert here tonight. So if there's any in-depth questions that I can't answer, by all means, just pop in and feel free to ask them. So some of the projects that were our recommendations that were outlined in the master plan was the North Reservoir construction. We needed to address storage, and that's been completed in 2019. The next was the South Reservoir rehabilitations. This is a facility from the 1980s that's seen its day. It's not a complete throwaway, so we are currently in the process of a rehabilitation program there. Next, as Amjad identified, was the Northeast Gateway, which is underway, and that was supported, financially supported by the drought, I apologize, I wrote disaster there, Drought and Flood Protection Program, which is an Alberta Environment Initiative grant, and we were successful in receiving $5.4 million for that. Next, we have our North Wells it's completely underway right now, and that was also supported by the Alberta Municipal Water and Wastewater Partnership. We received close to $1 million in grant funding for that. We also received just about the same amount for our South Well development from the same grantor, which is AMWIP, or Alberta Water Wastewater Partnership. Also underway is the Bogotto to Broadway Rise water main, and then the ductile iron replacement program, which has been around for about 15 years now. Other than that, we are supporting further analysis and planning, and by that I mean an update to the water master plan, consumption assessments, and well capacity studies. And then long-term, the regional water connection to support the further long-term growth. I do believe someday we will see a population greater than 30,000 because this is just a great place to be. So turning to the North Wells and a quick overview of where we are with that. So we have one new well 14, which is located at our current North Reservoir. That one will produce close to 7 liters a second for us. Its status right now is it is in the AEP approval stage, and we're waiting to hear back from Alberta Environment. Next, we have our well 15 and 16, and that's located at the Kiwanis Campground property. That's just north of the Jarvis Bay Campground. So we are currently, again, waiting for AEP approval for those. Our drawdown testing showed that we could safely withdraw almost 18 and a half liters a second from one of them, and the neighboring well 3 liters a second. We also have the well 17 and 18, and we're in negotiations are ongoing with the landowner right now. And those are some, that's a very lucrative one. It is just south of the North Reservoir. You could almost throw a stone and hit the North Reservoir. And that one's a big producer at 20 liters a second, and the additional almost 7 liters. Well 19, again, we're in negotiations and access design stage with the landowners there, and that one will bring us roughly 5 liters. Again, we're in negotiations with well 20 with the landowner, and that one we're hoping to see 6 liters a second. As was highlighted earlier, another capital improvement that we're making right now is the Northeast Gateway Transmission Main, which is being installed, and commissioning is expected in the fall of 2026. Here is just a quick overview of where I've described those wells to be. And on to our south system wells. So here we've got 5 wells identified. Well 2, which is a, we're bringing it back. I'm sorry, I can't think of the term for it. It was a decommissioned well. At the time, it had collapsed in on itself, and the town just simply didn't need the water at that moment. So we're going to be performing some drawdown tests. It's located near Palo Park, and we want to make sure that it's still going to be a viable source for us. We have an existing well 3, so one of our 4 wells in town. We're going to be doing some upgrades to it. So right now it is only licensed for a lesser volume of water than what we feel that the drawdown testing showed us. So that in turn, additional well supply license from the government, and we're going to need to upsize the pumping capacity and capabilities. Well 21, 22, and 23, which are identified here on the map, are in the planning and drawdown testing stages. So in essence, we look at the North Wells as a couple years ahead of where we are with the South Wells. Okay, so that's enough about wells, unless you have some questions on those.
Not so much a question on the wells, but going back to that South Reservoir, if I remember correctly, we're refurbishing pumping station within that reservoir. And my second question, to confirm that, but my second question is about building bigger reservoirs to hit the demands. Can we build on top of the South Reservoir? Do we need to build on a new site? How can we build the greater capacity on the south, or either one, right? But are they engineered so that they can be expanded? Or do we have to just build parallel to them?
Yeah, through the chair, that's a great question. So the North Reservoir was designed to, in essence, install additional tanks. The South Reservoir wasn't. In the Water Master Plan, it did identify a need for additional storage as the population grows, and that would be in the west lands. So someday there may be a need for a 3rd reservoir. The refurbishment at the South Reservoir, you're right, was to refurbish some pumping systems, some pipes and whatnot. It was also identified that there's a treatment issue there. With the new storage tank that was added in, it caused a short-circuiting effect. Basically, water's coming in and it's going out too fast. Doesn't seem like a big problem, but one of the things you need to have is your disinfection chemical needs to have contact with that water for a specific amount of time. So operationally, it's a little bit of a delicate balance to make sure that we don't short-circuit that. So there's been some baffling that's been added. when we decommission the pumping from the south reservoir, we're taking away an extra pressure zone. So in essence, we have 2 pumping facilities at that south reservoir. We're decommissioning the old one, adding some treatment improvements. Now, to your question about adding capacity to the south reservoir, I think in my unengineered mind, more of an operator I am, I don't think we can, but I'll turn that over to Amjad.
Yeah, it will be a big challenge because the water has a lot of weight. Like 1 cubic meter of water is 1 ton. So imagine like 6,000 cubes, it will be a humongous structure. So usually we put it on ground and the weight is distributed. So in the north reservoir, if we want to expand it, it will be north of the existing reservoir. We have land there. In the south reservoir, we don't have land, but as Monique mentioned, if we have to build another reservoir, it will be west of the town somewhere. But we cannot put on the top of existing.
So the PCCP pipe, it was something nobody knew what it was until it ruptured in Calgary. And it ruptured in Montreal, and it made a lot of municipalities, us included, go, we have that pipe, we need a plan for it, because we don't want to be caught in the same situations. So as a result, in our 2026 operating budget, we were allocated a dollar amount to come up with our risk management and our emergency preparedness plan. So with that, we are have purchased repair parts so that in the event that there is a critical failure, we're able to act quickly. We've procured the services of a contractor that has the ability, this is an easy pipe to work on, and we've managed an agreement with them. In addition to that, we're going to be relying on hydraulic modeling. So the PCCP pipe itself supplies a major portion of that system. We need to ensure if we're down, let's say for 2, 3, 4 days, weeks, how are we going to connect one system to the other without relying on that main transmission line? So our hopes are to have the parts in place, the plan completed, the hydraulic study completed, and have that before the end of this year and ready to act. So there's just a quick update on the PCCP pipe. It's a bit of a treacherous one. Repair parts aren't readily available. They have a various different makeup of sizes, inside diameter, outside diameter. But so we're going to position ourselves to be able to respond as quickly as possible. So the last couple of slides here that we have, we're looking ahead over the next 1 to 5 years here. So administration is going to focus on moving several of these planning initiatives ahead. We're going to include updates to planning documents, as I said, the Water Master Plan, or well capacity study, and potentially even more, consumption assessment. We're going to continue to advance the groundwater supply development, completing these major construction projects that are underway, and in essence, our target is to improve the overall system. A large focus over the next several years will be ensuring that the town remains financially and operationally positioned to maintain this infrastructure. And we need to respond to the growing demand and manage those long-term demands responsibly. Apologies, Amjad.
So I already touched base a little bit on asset management and basically what it is that we have to do condition assessment first of all our pipes. And for that, there are a couple of ways we can do. Like we can base our analysis on the water main breaks in area to identify which pipes need to be replaced, or there is a new technology where a probe is inserted into the hydrant and it can go both ways, like 200 meter or 150 meter, and they can detect any leaks in the system. And it will take a significant amount of time to, and we will only do that for the ductile, not for the entire system. So once we have that data available, we can make a plan how to replace those pipes on a yearly basis. And that's where we can achieve a target of 10% water loss. Next one is to complete the 10-year capital plan, whatever plans we have in the 10-year. And ultimately, we have to go to regional because we cannot rely on our groundwater wells for a very long time. We can service like 30,000 people, but anything beyond that will need a humongous amount of effort because our aquifer is also limited in capacity. So we have to go to either North Saskatchewan River or the Red Deer water system. So, and we will, in the near future, we will be requesting the commission to conduct, we could initiate ourselves, but it's in the portfolio of the Regional Wastewater Commission to conduct the feasibility study for the water. So we have all our options available for us in case we go to the regional system. Thank you.
So we were to bring a couple questions for council. So I guess our first question is there any concerns with the approach that administration has taken in regards to our water conservation or high demand periods?
Ian?
Not so much a concern, although I'll say one of them might be. But yeah, I like the approach and very thoughtful and brass tacks, as we say. If we get this wrong, we're in trouble. So I appreciate all the work your departments are doing combined. I was going to bring up a couple questions, some of the public information too, and one I'll just mention, this might be the only criticism, is in our stage 2 water restrictions. It's listed on our page 24 of our agenda, but it's just, you don't need to find it, but it's just about the community garden. And I see the community garden not so much as a town function, but as a individual residence function. So it appeared to me that in stage 2, we couldn't water the community garden. And if I'm reading that incorrectly, my apologies, but it sounded like it's stage 2, we would not be watering them. And to me, that's a food security issue for many people who might be using that community garden. So I wanted it to be treated just as any private citizen. I can still hand water my vegetable garden, no matter what the water status is, until it stops flowing, to keep food on my table. So that's the only thought that might be criticism of our policy. 2 other areas are more about awareness. I was going to mention about goldfish can hurt tourism by its effect on the lake, and I agree with that statement, but I also equally agree a big message for making us think about goldfish and why we don't want to give them an afterlife in the ponds is the fact that they knock out the indigenous fish. And so, and that to me is an issue on the ecology, not just on the tourism side of it. So I thought that was a message we're sharing to add to that message already made. And then the third thing I was going to say is to help us as residents and our whole town, we're starting to see it zero-scaping. I won't advertise where I saw it, but putting out the black tarp and just throwing some river rock, is one way to zeroscape in the sense of creating a garden that requires no water. I think the one I'm picturing in my mind is kind of just terribly boring to look at, because gardens are supposed to have some aesthetic to them. But I was thinking about our ability as a community to show other examples of xeriscaping using our indigenous plants, you know, and also, sure, using river rock examples, but the idea of landscaping examples that we see around town as well, and in many other places that we might visit. So I was thinking about how do we help our residents conserve water in additional ways? And thinking about that 1.5% less water being used, that surprised me. And then at the same time I was thinking, I do see a greater tolerance when I drive around town in the summer for having a brown lawn. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. People accept that, you know, I'm just not gonna use as much water as possible to keep it green, lush green, maybe I give a little bit. And I've noticed that. So maybe that's partly why. And we have the lower flush toilets, all those programs going on. The new construction is all low water use. And I've heard that of Vancouver too. 1 million more people living in a certain period of time, you know, whatever it is in the last 10 years, 1 million more people living in the Vancouver area, and they use the same amount of water, which means people are using less water nowadays. And that is definitely the need. And there's, you know, we have this solution, the river. We're going to the river to get our long-term water. Well, it's not going to be in my lifetime. I'll be long dead. But the rivers are currently fed in the summertime by the melting snow and glaciers. And the glaciers are shrinking. So we as Albertans, not just us as Sylvan Lakers, have to think about that when we think the river's our solution. So we will always, I think, depend on wells, and the river will be part of the solution. So that's a couple thoughts that, and I know they're doing a lot of work on that as an Alberta province, the scientists that work for Alberta province. So a couple thoughts.
Joe?
I just have a question about the water conservation policy. What's the rationale, if any, it may just never come up, but for not including drought conditions as one of the triggers for water restrictions? Because I know we've been in the drought conditions for, what, 10 years almost? It strikes me as just being unusual that that's not even, so what as I can tell, not even a factor in us putting restrictions in place.
Yeah, so what the reason for the policy was the effect on the aquifer. Now, drought will affect the aquifer. So as opposed to looking at it outside of what the system can handle, and that's where the hydrologists really shone here. They were able to identify certain trigger points. So what this is based on, if you don't mind, I'll get a little bit into it. Each one of my wells has a measurement in it, basically a level transducer that says you have 50 meters before the top of your water surface. When I drop to, say, 55 meters, there's an operating procedure that couples this policy as well. That operator procedure will tell me at a certain threshold that I need to, in essence, turn the well down 75%. If I don't see that aquifer recover in a 24-hour period, then I go down to 50% of my well flow. By doing so, if I still don't see any recovery, then I shut my well in. I'm not able to produce well water from there. Our current well system is on a pretty tight string. Like, we need those wells to pump at specific times as they do. So what the hydrologists had done is come up with that matrix, basically, that when you reach this certain matrix and you're not able to recover, you need to then shut that well in. So then we had to take into consideration, as I said, we've got a very narrow room for margin, if you will. If I lost a well for an extended period of time, I do see that effect in my reservoir. And if we look at the reservoir as, in essence, two big tanks, 50% of that we need to reserve for fire flow capacity. In essence, that leaves the town for consumption purposes, watering, spray parks, so on and so forth, leaves us with an additional 50%. So then that's where the triggers were based on, is that reservoir level needs to maintain a certain level, and of course our wells too. So without taking individual circumstances such as what's happening in the environment into consideration, we just focused on those triggers. So now, let's say we come out of the drought and all of a sudden, you know, we've got more than enough rainwater, nobody's watering, we go back into that drought. And instead of just relying on current conditions, it made more sense for us to rely on the science of what the wells and the reservoir level was doing. I hope that answered your question.
Mostly, it does answer my question, to be blunt. I'm just trying to, because the aquifer and the well levels and everything they sort of trail like current weather conditions, right? Like it's not like you get rain and suddenly your aquifer goes up the next day. It takes
Tens
a
of
long,
years.
Yeah. I just worry that without factoring in those drought conditions, that maybe we're just missing a piece. Even though it is current, I get that. We might be kind of shooting ourselves in the foot long term if it continues.
Yeah, and
I know we're not debating the policy right now, but
no, absolutely, and I respect that, and I see what you're saying. You know, if this is a long term, this is our, you know, maybe the climate is changing, and this is our new reality. The unique opportunity we have there is again back to the public education and maybe some additional initiatives. Like right now we have the Rain Barrel Initiative. Maybe that can be widened, maybe additional xeriscaping I heard mentioned, the low drought planting. There's a good opportunity for the town to sort of use that education, move the people away from, you know, I think it was Councillor Stindy that said, you know, you see the brown grass. Well, brown's the new green grass for us, you know, like maybe that becomes, you know, oh, that guy's got lush green grass, look at that guy. You know, we have an opportunity to change the mentalities. And, you know, as lovely as lush green grass is, clover's a beautiful option, you know, but that also, again, I'm going to refer back to the public education. There's a good opportunity for us to say, yeah, we all want this green grass. And sorry, Councillor Stindy, I didn't come back to your question around the community gardens, and it sort of ties into this one. If the water is harvested, basically what we're trying to do is keep people from turning on the tap during those peak demands or those high press times. The community gardens themselves have water tanks there that are often provided by the town, say when we have 1,000 liters of water left on our water truck. We'll go fill that up, and then water harvesting as well. So those are not affected by the stage 2 restrictions.
We're good. We're good.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
It's awesome. Okay, so it is 5:18. We have been sitting here for quite a while. We're going to take a break until 5:25. Time. So we are picking up with the next piece, and it does not look like the faces change. Source control program update. Ms. Johnson, we get to keep you. So why is Mr. Boudreau here? Is he just here for eye candy?
Support and eye candy, yes. I like to have the experts ready to go when we need
So that
them.
brings me to wondering why Mr. Boudreau is here. I'm sorry, Eric. Earlier today when you said I have the expert here, I looked back at Eric and the look on his face was awesome. It was like,
I wish I'd
he
seen
was
that.
wondering, who's she talking about?
It's him.
Okay, source control program.
Great. Thank you. Tonight, I'm going to provide a brief update on the town source control program. We're going to talk about why it exists, why we built what we have to date, what we're seeing so far, and what's coming next. The essence in the program is about protecting the wastewater infrastructure, meeting our regional obligations, and managing a very real financial risk for this community. I will keep it high level, and I'm happy to answer any questions as we go. So source control, what does it mean? It's stopping wastewater contaminants before they enter our sewer system. Even the most advanced treatment systems, like the one in Red Deer, cannot remove everything. Once certain contaminants enter the system, the damage and the costs are locked in. So source control focuses on preventing prohibited and high-strength waste at the source, particularly from non-domestic users. Our program follows the 3 E's principles, and that is educate first, encourage compliance, and enforce only when necessary. The goal is long-term compliance, not punishment. In 2022, the city of Red Deer identified elevated levels of BOD, biochemical oxygen demand, and chemical oxygen demand in Sylvan Lake's wastewater. The exceedance, we were told, puts us at risk of being placed onto Red Deer's overstrength surcharge program. The superintendent left me with one saying that will stick with me for the rest of my life. And he looked me dead in the eyes and said, I want your compliance, not your cash, but if you make me, I'll take your money. So the source control program was then birthed. To put that into context, our average monthly treatment costs range anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000 a month. With surcharges, that can rise to $750,000 to possibly $1 million per month. And that cost isn't a one-time charge. That is every month until you can bring whatever parameter puts you on the source control program down to the acceptable levels. So those charges, they would flow from the city of Red Deer through the Wastewater Regional Commission and then directly to the town. Doing nothing would mean passing the non-compliance costs on to the residents and businesses via or through higher utility rates. So there are 3 key reasons that this matters. So first is the financial protection. As I said, 1 month of surcharge costs, those could devastate our finances. Second is the legal obligation. Our agreement with the Commission and the City of Red Deer prohibits discharging known overstrength wastewater to their systems. And third, the infrastructure and the environmental protection. Overstrength wastewater not only damages pipes, it disrupts the biological treatments, and it puts our operators and the environment at risk. It also puts your neighbors at risk. We were sharing a story about a particular commercial subdivision that had one very greasy area. That system backed up right at lunch hour, which caused a loss of revenue at many businesses in the area. So we feel that source control helps us with all 3 of these. So what the source control program covers, the program was targeting high-risk contributors based on wastewater characteristics. So not necessarily business size or location, but those characteristics. So right now, those highest risk sectors are food service establishments, so that's primarily fat oils and greases, fermentation facilities, so breweries, distilleries, alcohol facilities, and they are the creators of COD and BOD. That was the one that we were initially warned about with the City of Red Deer, and also suspended solids. And then automotive industry, which its primary contributors are the solids and petroleum hydrocarbons. So each sector has tailored requirements and tailored guidance and tailored support. So phase one, we initiated in 2023, and that was for food service establishments. And all restaurants are required by the National Plumbing Code to have a grease interceptor or grease trap. And all restaurants are now enrolled in the self-reporting program that we have. We continue to work with them on our education, with inspections, and our maintenance guidance. We have a strong compliance, and we're noticing an improved performance from the reporters. In 2025, we began rolling out our fermentation for phase two, and we relied heavily on education first. We've developed industry-specific requirements for them, and we focused again on BOD, COD, TSS, total suspended solids, pH, and temperature. The fermentation facilities, although there is only a very small handful of them, because they were existing already, the infrastructure for testing or treatment is quite costly. So right now we're working with them on more of an administrative level and education level, and hoping that we can, well, with new fermentation facilities, they will be required to adhere to a specific standard. For 2026, our outreach program in the automotive sector starts this fall, with compliance inspections planned for as early as 2027. So the gradual rollout was deliberate. It gave businesses time to understand our expectations, to ask those questions, to reach out and, in essence, adjust. What we're seeing so far is that our education is working. Most businesses want to comply, provided they just need some clear expectation and to know what are some practical tools. So we're also seeing some regional confidence. We've improved our data sharing, and I believe positioning ourselves with the Commission and the City of Red Deer. So what's next for the program? Again, automotive outreach starts this fall, with the remainder of communications in January, and then inspections beginning in 2027. We'll continue the education first approach, with enforcement only being used when it's needed, after all supports have been provided. So we recognize you as councillors get a lot of the technical questions regarding operational items such as this. So if a business does reach out, by all means, there is a link to the Sylvan Lake Source Control, where the website has industry-specific guides. It has clear expectations of the requirements. And then there's also a section where you can contact the town staff and speak directly with a staff member. So we don't want them to guess. We want them to have the most updated, accurate, and consistent messaging and available at all times. So in closing, we know that our source control is protecting our infrastructure. We know it's protecting our finances, and we're certain that it's harvesting and maintaining our regional relationships. It's fiscally responsible, it's legally required, and it is designed to be fair. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or conversations.
Thoughts, questions? Councillor Stindy?
My question is regarding something that came up when we were first introducing it about a year ago, and there was, it was a new program, and it was tough on the restaurants to understand everything, and at that point I was thinking and raised the point that, you know, it's not just the restaurants that cause fat oils and greases and other things in our water, it's us as residents too, and not to do everything at once, because we can't, but how much awareness can we do and when can we kick in with, call it the resident side of the town, where I get information about how I can be a better wastewater creator? Yeah, just curious about that side.
Through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak to that. Many of you maybe remember the Don't Store It, Pour It. It was Edmonton's campaign, and it was simply just gave you a can that said, don't store it, pour it. And it's something that's forever ingrained in me. Don't pour it, store it. Yeah. Did I say don't store it, pour it? Darn it. My apologies. Thank you. We don't want to go that route. Similar to Edmonton. But again, that's an opportunity for us to do the public education, to come up with that Kishi, whatever, slogan that stuck with. So at the Home and Garden Trade Show the year before, we had taken a stab at that. So we had bought some disposable cups to store it in, but we lacked that catchy phrase. So I think, I do definitely recognize that there is a need, and you're right, they are contributors. Restaurants specifically, right now it was available in the bylaw. We do recognize that it is our biggest risk to the system, but definitely there needs to be some more, some good initiatives around that for sure.
Another question, just have we definitely improved, I'm assuming yes, the amount of solids and oils in our water? Is Red Deer now saying you guys are below the thresholds now? Is that improvement super good?
Yes, so speaking with our regional partners at the lift station that I believe a number of you had taken a tour on at the beginning of this term, their grease shutdown problems have diminished significantly. So that tells us there that what we're sending to Red Deer is doing better. In our sampling program, which is random composite sampling, we are seeing some marginal improvements. Now, what the city of Red Deer identified as the highest risk item for us, the thing that was weighing on them, was more related to the fermentation facilities, that COD and BOD, it can upset the plant. Their plant utilizes microbiology, in essence, to clean the water. Too much of that upsets that microbiology and can actually kill off that microbiology. Unlike water, wastewater, it comes. There's not a valve to turn it off. You must be able to treat it at all times. So we are seeing some marginal improvements with our COD, BOD, and the fact that we have initiated a program like this has, I would like to say, really put Red Deer's mind at ease knowing that we're doing something. And Lindsay, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, has done an absolutely fantastic job recognizing that we're a very small department. This is a very big task. So she's developed the online self-reporting system. And so much we were invited to speak at Banff, the Operators Association conference on how to develop a source control program such as this one. We've had a couple of reach outs from different municipalities on, hey, how do you do this? And the thing with our self-reporting system is it puts it into the realm of a municipality this size with limited resources can also implement something without just saying, throwing up your hands and we don't have the staff, we can't do it. What she's developed with the self-reporting system definitely puts it into the manageable realm for most municipalities.
Councillor Bilodeau.
So you and I had a good conversation just after the State of the Mayor's community address about this very topic.
Yes.
I've had more feedback from another business, so it concerns me. The feedback that I'm hearing mostly is that the businesses are really taken off guard by the cost of this whole project, not really understanding that it's in place. Business owners, realtors, so it's been brought to my attention that maybe we're lacking in the education department, just given that it's, we've mandated that we're doing this. And it's happening at a time when we're applying for a change of use permit or getting a new development permit or something. And I'm hearing that it's just because the dollar value is so large, $15,000 plus for these, to install this, it's taking people by surprise, and it's concerning. So I think we need to bring attention to, where we're supposed to be starting with education. Is it possible, and I'm kind of leaning into the industrial area. I know we talked about the restaurants. I think that was a couple of years back, and then moving into fermentation. You had told me you specifically were working with Snake Lake. We have a large industrial area that I think has been identified as being a bit of a problem area for Sylvan Lake. Is it possible to do a massive education, whether it's an open house or it's door to door for an entire area? Because I really feel that these businesses are being caught off guard. Recently one of the businesses has told me, not directly, but that they put in for a change of use permit, and they were sort of waiting and getting excited to open their new business, and then this came in sort of last. And probably because it may be one of those automotive places, which is on the radar, but hasn't, I know we're getting there, but, so that's the concern, is just, can we see, when they bring up realtors, realtors need this information. I'm not sure how to put that out there, but they need this information if you're contracting a realtor to potentially have someone cover, you're hiring a realtor for, maybe a new tenant or something like that. This information, I feel like the feedback I'm getting is that it's just not people, it is only a couple of years in the making, but because there's such a large value attached to it. I do have a question, and this came to me from a local business, is how does our Monitor Access Points program compare to Red Deer's?
Thank you, through the chair. Great points. So I'll start sort of at the top of where I noted down. So I hear your suggestion about the realtors. We did take that. We've now issued a letter to realtors, all the realtors that our economic development officer was able to provide to us. In addition to that, we also sent that same communication to the plumbers. A lot of these things are part of the National Plumbing Code and isn't new information for plumbers. So we did recognize that the realtors are a first line of defense. As that potential business purchaser is there, they can say this is a requirement. You should look into this with the town before making any decisions. Now, the development permit, initially what we don't want to do is to place burden on existing businesses while still running a program like this. So it was a little bit of a delicate balancing act. So what we had come up with is if there is any permitting that is required through our development permit office, that would be the time that they would be required to bring that up to today's standard. So our intent is not to go to each business and say, here's an expensive piece of infrastructure that you need to install for benefits that aren't always 100% clear to you. So that's where we had decided that the development permit time. Now, with the automotives, as you said, we're not fully built out here, but this is also construction season. There is a lot of development permits that are going out. So we're trying to rush that education into their hands and get these things at the business development permitting time. Again, in our mind, it was to ease that burden of existing businesses having to come up into compliance. We also have a number of relaxations that are available to people. So you're right, it can be costly. One of these access points can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, depending on where it's located. But there is relaxations. As an example, a floor drain in an automotive place. they can choose to sever the tie between their floor drain and the sanitary system. They'll still enroll in our source control program, but they will not be required to install a monitoring access point or any post-treatment, pre-treatment chemical, because they've in essence removed the risk. So individually, we assess the risks as they're coming to our attention. And I do agree the massive education is, I think you guys have heard me say a few times tonight, you know, we really, there's huge benefits to operating a system like this when you can rely on the public and the compliance and the buy-in from them as well. I'd love the idea of a door-to-door campaign, most definitely. One thing I don't want to do is to alarm the existing business owners. I don't want, you know, any of let's say the concrete plant, or any of the businesses that are existing to think that we're coming at them with a big stick someday. You know, so that's right now we're just relying on the permitting process to implement those changes to their structures and their infrastructure. And just to speak to, you had mentioned, does this model after the city of Red Deer? Absolutely it does. The city of Red Deer has actually come to us and said they wanted to adopt our self-reporting system. We've also taken tours with the city of Edmonton, their drainage district, the city of Calgary, the city of Airdrie we're in close contact with, as well as the city of Red Deer. We've learned all we can learn from the city of Red Deer, and we needed to sort of expand to the next level, if you will. So all of these are not created solely from the town of Sylvan Lake. Everything has been borrowed from those municipalities that have been actively working a program like this. Airdrie, as an example, requires treatment of their sewage before they set that into the regional system, which costs them millions of dollars. So to avoid Calgary's surcharge, they've in essence had to install a wastewater treatment plant before they could send it to the regional. We don't ever want to be in that position. So between the education, the relaxations, and what we feel is a fair time to catch a business into this program, we're hoping that meets the needs of the town of Sylvan Lake and their business owners.
So and thank you for that information. I don't think that I hear anything bad about what we have to do, because it's the right thing to do. We know that we're shipping our wastewater all the way to Red Deer. The concern is that Red Deer potentially has a system in place that is less finicky, maybe less specific, and so costs less to install the monitoring system. That's a concern, knowing someone that went through that process. And you know, the question is, why do we have to do it so differently from Red Deer when we're actually shipping all of our wastewater to Red Deer? Anyways, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you for that. So the infrastructure that needs to be installed, in essence, is done by a contractor. It's not the town of Sylvan Lake digging in that monitoring access point, much like the city of Red Deer. They rely on contracted services. Their business relies on the contracted services to install that. So again, we did model our program much after the city of Red Deer, and I think that where I say we've had to go to the next step is that they're a little bit behind on the fermentation portion of it. They've got their automotives and their their food service establishments underway. So that's when we started to look at the larger municipalities, because that's where a lot of microbreweries, distilleries, and things already exist. So the comparatives to the city of Red Deer, and they're, I may be not understanding correctly, but they're cheaper to do business with. I just don't understand maybe how, being that it's a contracted service that would install this. Not so much the town of Sylvan Lake saying, I want $15,000, we'll hire the contractor. We do work with the businesses, so much so that my source control operators are on site for the procurement end of it. So they're meeting the town is meeting with those contractors to discuss the proper placement, how we can get the best deal, can we avoid asphalt, because that does increase the costs. And we will look into the city of Red Deer a little bit deeper, but I'm not sure where ours differs from theirs in that regard.
If I could just add to that, I think the public reception sometimes, or what we hear is not always what we're maybe hearing on the other side. I can say I've been involved in 2 situations with source control, where they've really gone above and beyond to find the most efficient, inexpensive way to make it happen. And maybe sometimes where I've heard, well, I didn't hear anything till here, and then I see my email trail and I'm like, yeah, but I have from here where we were reaching out. So people are frustrated and bring forward information, but sometimes it's not all of the information. Would be.
And it could be, and of course I'm asking the question on behalf of somebody else, and you know, this is an important thing to do, is ask the questions. People want to know the answers. I was sent the Red Deer mandate, and you know, the question was just, they seem to have, maybe they're less specific in what has to be done to achieve the same thing Sylvan is. And so because maybe we're more specific in where it needs to go or what, I'm not sure, but you know, alluding to the fact that it's costing so much more in Sylvan versus Red Deer, because achieving the same thing and not really understanding why it's so much cheaper to do in Red Deer versus Sylvan. I could maybe leave that one with you, but that is something that's coming out of it. So it's concerning, you know, to hear that, because we don't want to feel like we're making it harder for the businesses to get an important thing done. And I do understand that we're talking about slowly making this happen versus having to do, you know, have everybody do it at the same time. And I understand that. The last question, I'm sorry. It is regarding sort of finding the problem areas. So can the town install like the map on the monitoring on a main line to see where the bulk of the contaminants are like coming from, and starting to work back from there, rather, you know, versus like targeting a whole area? Does that make sense, my question?
Yep. I think what you're saying to me is, if we've got an elevated parameter, how do I triangulate where that is and a monitoring access point? So we have that currently with our sanitary system. We monitor access points. Sounds so fancy. It's really not. It's a manhole that I can connect my sampler into, and it goes into the flow of sewage as it goes by. So we already have that infrastructure in place. What we've basically done is identified high-risk areas. Right. So that would be your industrial area, your food service establishments. So even if we did rely on utilizing the current infrastructure to identify those higher risk areas, what we're in essence doing is sort of sampling something, verifying what we kind of already know. So on that system, as an example, if we looked at the Silver bubble, there used to be a oil and gas company there, and we were identifying some different parameters. There's also other automotive type facilities there. At that point, we could identify that, yeah, this is a higher risk area here, but without those individual monitoring access points, we're just strictly left with the education, the administrative control, if you will, and nothing is an engineered control or a compliance measure, enforcement measure as well. So not to diminish that the education isn't needed, and I do, you're speaking my language absolutely, in triangulating those areas, and we can do that cost effectively with our existing infrastructure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Just on that identifying, pinpointing triangulation, to pinpoint an individual business that might be creating a lot of source, is that possible to get right down to the individual business? Do we have the tools that can go, call it up the line to each branch?
Yes, not without a monitoring access point. So we in essence, the monitoring access point, if you will, so the service connection coming from the establishment to the transmission main or the main itself, in essence, is an access point on this specific system. So let's say we have some catastrophic parameter that's been released and it's sampled from here. There is no question that it wasn't the neighboring or further downstream, so on and so forth. So those monitoring access points are individual to the service line, and that's how we identify and you know, can work with the compliance end of it.
So I have a question that I apologize if it comes across as being redundant, but the source control program standard that we implement here in Sylvan, does it exceed the standard that Red Deer is using, or are the standards by which we're seeking the COD, the BOD, the TSS, is it the same as Red Deer's, or are we exceeding the standard?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So our bylaw identifies our parameters, some of them higher than Red Deer and lower than Red Deer. Now that was done before the source control program was implemented. So there is a need for those standards to align. I understand why we put ours more stringent. That was back in the day with lagoon treatment. But now it's important that we meet Red Deer's standard. Now that's just strictly for the parameter itself, the sewage contaminant itself. Where our source control program, that's where it differs, is right now, it needs to be aligned in the bylaw. The implementation of the program doesn't supersede Red Deer's, Edmonton's, Calgary's, or Airdrie's. It aligns with those ones. But the bylaw does need some adjusting in those parameters. So right now, if I tested a COD at 500 milligrams per liter, my bylaw warrants that, but Red Deer says 300 milligrams per liter. So it just makes more sense to have that aligned.
So does it not make sense then the equipment that you'd have to install in Sylvan would be more sensitive or more aware than the equipment you would install in Red Deer in order to meet their standard?
Yeah, I think I make it sound more fancy than it is. It's really, all I'm doing is a composite sampler. So it's a pump and a jug. And I put that into the monitoring access point, and periodically it pulls liquid into the jug. At that point, I send it away for analysis. So the sampling process program, or the sampling process, the infrastructure, the apparatuses that are used are very similar in most municipalities. So not much for outside of just that composite sampling is what we're performing when it comes to the sampling. And that process, procedure, if you will, aligns with the other municipalities.
Okay. Joe?
I remember the hullabaloo back when I was a lot younger, when they were rolling out mandatory water meters in homes in Calgary. Because prior to that, you didn't even need a water meter in your home to show how much you were using. I'm kind of going back to that in my head, in the sense that this seems like something that makes eminently a lot of sense to have installed in a commercial building so that we can test for compliance on these added chemicals. Like, you're never gonna find someone walking to the street and pouring a jug of motor oil into the storm drain. Well, I shouldn't say never, you should never, but realistically, that's not how we're gonna catch businesses that aren't compliant. I appreciate the slow rollout, that I really like. Is there a reason we're not looking at or haven't looked at in the past making this something that would be required in all new commercial buildings, or is it now making its way into the bylaw and building permit requirements?
Yeah, I think that things really changed when the lagoon system went to Red Deer. And then, of course, in 2022, I'm not going to make any bones about it. It was on my radar. It honestly was for some day, but it wasn't until that superintendent said those words to us, and that's when it really became, absolutely critical that we at least show them that we're doing something, and then, not just with our sample results, but the program in its entirety. So much like the water meter installation in Calgary, and much like what we've seen with food service establishments at first, we were not very popular. But, you know, through our outreach attempts and our, you know, I do believe that our program has been very supportive. Again, we don't want to cause financial hardships, and that's why we've chosen just to stick with the development process permit. Now, any new development is going to follow those construction standards, and those monitoring access points are commented on each and every referral that we receive. But it's just hard to go back without causing that burden. So a little bit of a juggling act, if you will, and we're hoping that we can, you know, not increase the burdens and get it at the right time, which is at the development stage, development permitting stage.
Yeah.
And I know this has come up in the past, so you might have given us this information previously, and if so, I'm very sorry. How close are we currently to hitting that overcharge limit? And the reason I ask that is because I'm always concerned about a free rider problem, right? Where it doesn't really cost anybody anything to dump this stuff into the system until it does. And then it costs everybody. And I already see people complaining about our utility rates enough as is. I shudder to think if all of a sudden they were getting a bill that was 4 times the amount because of this, and we couldn't even identify who was causing it.
I think that the City of Red Deer is appeased with the program's rollout so far. And with that, we're going to continue to advance the program, not just for appeasal. Again, there's some operational, some environmental, and some, you know, absolute cost savings that come along with it. But when I talk about how close we are to being on the overstrength program, since the program's initiation, the City of Red Deer is not reaching out to us asking those questions anymore.
Good. Any other thoughts? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have come to council and committee reports. Those are all there in the package. Upcoming meetings and events. Council on May 26th. Governance and priorities on June 2nd. Is there anything else that needs to be brought forward? Shake of a head? Okay, well, we come to the end of this meeting. We are adjourned.